This show contains general information about legal matters. This information is not advice and should not be treated as such. If you have any specific questions about any legal matter, you should consult your attorney or other professional legal services provider. Be advised that while Cheapskate is a lawyer, he is not your lawyer. Also, Jimmy Franks is an idiot, and you should never take his advice.
You're listening to Song Crimes, where we are ordering court-mandated therapy for Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train. I'm professional idiot Jimmy Franks, and along with real-life attorney Cheapskate, we explore the statements and confessions made by songwriters in popular music and pass judgment on those who choose to operate outside the law. Court is now in session. Family law is the area of focus for today's episode. I know that that's not necessarily your field.
It used to be. My first 4 years in practice, I did divorces and custody cases.
What's an interesting story from your days in family law?
One case in which a fellow was convinced that his wife was having an affair, and he figured that he could come up with a foolproof way to detect this affair. And so what he did was he would come into the bedroom at night when she was sleeping, and he would put on a fake voice and say, "Hey, baby, it's your lover." "Bob, is that you?" And no, I'm not Bob. Bob is your husband. I am your secret lover. You know, the one that Bob doesn't know about. And at which point she flips on the desk lamp, and the ruse is revealed.
A bad Scooby-Doo villain.
Yeah. He tried it a second time. It didn't work then either.
We don't get into divorce, but we do get into a host of other kind of home and family issues today. And first and possibly best known of our selections is Johnny Cash's classic, A Boy Named Sue.
Some gal would giggle and I'd get red, and some guy'd laugh and I'd bust his head. I'll tell you, life ain't easy for a boy named Sue.
And I believe this was on the Live from Folsom Prison album. A story of family strife, a classic tale of father and son. He named his son Sue. This leads Sue Cash to a life of challenges, experiences bullying growing up, got a grudge against his dad, and seeks revenge. And he gets his opportunity one day when he encounters him in a honky-tonk bar. It was in Gatlinburg, so we know that this altercation took place in Tennessee, and incidentally, it was in the summertime, and that's never a good time to be in a bad mood and to be liquored up because something's going to happen. But he encounters his father and sets out to let him know what he thinks about his name and what he's going to do about it. So they have a fight. Fisticuffs ensue, and I quote, "Well, I hit him hard right between the eyes, and he went down, but to my surprise, he comes up with a knife and cut off a piece of my ear." Holy cow. All right, but I busted a chair right across his teeth, and we crashed through the wall and into the street, kicking and a gouging in the mud and the blood and the beer. So, assault, battery, what are we looking at here?
Oh, boy. So, in most states, this is called battery. In Tennessee, it's called aggravated assault. It's aggravated not only because they're ripping off pieces of each other's ears, but because in the next verse, he sings, "He went for his gun, and I pulled mine first." So,
oh, yeah.
They're packing heat. They're drawing on each other. They're related by blood, so this is domestic assault as well. That means that if they're convicted under federal law, they lose their right to carry those guns.
Really? So, I mean, domestic assault, usually people think of that between partners or husband and wife, but that can be, I guess, between father and son.
Yes, it can.
So that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
It's instigated by Sue. Sue comes out and says, "My name is Sue. How do you do? Now you're going to die." So he challenges him. He threatens him. He throws the first punch. So does Sue Sr. Have a chance of getting off on self-defense?
I don't know. Sue Sr. is escalating the fight here. Sue here is starting just with fisticuffs, and Dad is escalating by bringing up a deadly weapon. Maybe if he had just thrown another punch and then run away, he'd be fine. Generally, self-defense laws expect you to use just enough force to allow you to stop the danger to yourself. But he's going above and beyond.
Just for clarity, we will refer to the son as Sue and the father as Susan. Yeah, that should clear things up. Still, there's a lot of other stuff going on in this song as well. In Gatlinburg, apparently there's some card games going on. We catch Susan mid-deal at a poker table in this honky-tonk bar. Can you gamble in Tennessee?
Much like in Leroy Brown's case, only if you're doing it for charity.
He's at the St. Francis of Assisi honky-tonk charity poker tournament. Assuming that this is a licensed saloon. That is,
right, which, incidentally, I want to point out that Gatlinburg is located in one of the few dry counties in the United States. Now, there is a local option law that allows you to have a saloon within the city limits, but if they were in the unincorporated county, it wouldn't have been legal to have the saloon here.
It wasn't Gatlinburg adjacent or near Gatlinburg, so we'll.
Right, it's not West Gatlinburg or Gatlinburg Heights or Oak Meadows subdivision.
He does say at the very end, they have a conversation. They're able to process some of these complex emotions that they've experienced over a lifetime of being separated, being saddled with a name associated with a gender that Sue doesn't identify with. But they have a breakthrough. He gets all choked up, threw down his gun. He called him his pa, and he called him his son. Sue comes away with a different point of view. I think about him now and then, every time I try and every time I win. And if I ever have a son, I think I'm going to name him Bill or George, anything but Sue. I still hate that name. Well, if you hate that name, there is legal recourse, right? You can get a name change. At any point prior to this, he could have gotten a name change.
Yes, and it's generally pretty easy to do. You usually just have to run an ad in the legal notices of the paper. Let everybody know that if you have creditors, they should look for you under the new name. If you've got a parole officer, they should look for you under the new name.
It's probably more the latter in this case. It sounds like Sue's had a rough and tumble upbringing and may not be accustomed to dealing with a bureaucracy.
Yeah. And, the legal notices section is generally not cheap to run an ad in. It'll usually run you over $100 unless you're in a pretty small county. But, you can generally change your name to anything you want for any reason or no reason. Still
would have saved everybody a lot of hassle and legal fees and jail time if just been a little more proactive. But, hey, you can't unring that bell. And one thing that we didn't touch on was Susan Sr. Is he on the hook for being a deadbeat dad? Presuming that they're old enough to be in a bar, that 21 years have passed. This man has been out of Sue's life, probably hasn't been paying child support, has left no forwarding address or means of contacting them so that they could have a healthier dialogue about some of the issues. Is there any recourse that Sue or Sue's mother would have to collect on that unpaid child support?
Most likely it would be the state of Tennessee. The child support system is set up so that the state is usually the plaintiff, because the state is saying, hey, we've got our citizens here who are often going on public assistance and getting state benefits from us because you, Mr. Deadbeat Dad, are not contributing to your child. So the state brings the case against the deadbeat parent and says, all right, you owe us X amount of dollars, which we will distribute to the child support obligee, the person who actually stuck around to raise the kids. And those judgments don't go away when the child turns 18 or 21 or whatever the age of majority is in that state. Okay. That said, it sounds like Susan doesn't have a heck of a lot of assets, right. So they're not likely to be able to collect much, except maybe his poker winnings and the value of that gun, which he's not going to be allowed to carry anymore.
Right, and then I guess that's presuming that they got divorced at some point. They may still be married for all we know.
Right. Well, you can still get a child support order if you're married but separated. And so if Sue's mom had ever applied for something like Medicaid benefits for Sue or any other form of public assistance for Sue, the state would have said, well, we don't care that you're married. We're still bringing a child support case.
So let's review the charges. Assault, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty both of aggravated assault and domestic assault for both Susan and Sue.
Okay, and is Susan on the hook for back child support? Probably. It sounds like they're guilty.
Yep.
Well, I sentence Susan Sr. to consulting a baby name guidebook for any other children, legitimate or otherwise, so that maybe he chooses something that's a little more gender neutral, like a Robin or a Terry.
It looks like Susan named his child specifically because he wanted Sue to spend his entire life fighting. So I sentence both Susan and Sue to sit down and watch the music video for Beat It as many times as possible until they realize that violence is not the answer.
Next on the docket, Heart. All I want to do is make love to you.
This is one of the more beautiful songs about cheating ever written.
Yeah, it is my favorite song about a woman having sex with a drifter in order to make a child. Definitely my favorite one. To sum up, Ann Wilson is driving along the road one night, sees a stranger on the road. She offers him a ride. They check into a hotel room. And I quote, "So we found this hotel. It was a place I knew well. We made magic that night. Oh, he did everything right." Fast forward to a few years later. Then it happened one day. We came round the same way. You can imagine his surprise when he saw his own eyes. This man is meeting his child for the first time. The child that Ann Wilson had with his, quote, seed. Whoa. I don't even know where to begin with this. She had sex with a stranger to have a child. It's explained later in the song because her husband wasn't able to do that. There was some fertility issue. And a quote, please understand, I'm in love with another man, and what he couldn't give me was a one little thing that you can. So she's coming out and admitting, I used you for sex, I used you for genetic material to have a child. It seems like there's a lot of stuff here to unpack, so I'm just going to wind you up and let you go.
All right, so Hart is from Washington. We can start with the jurisdiction. In most states, there is a law that says if a child is born during a marriage, the child is presumed to be the biological child of the two people who are married, unless it is like mathematically impossible for that to be the case.
So the names that are on the birth certificate for all legal intents and purposes are the legal parents.
Yes.
That's just set in stone unless challenged otherwise.
Right. Now, if the stranger had looked at that weird sort of botany interlude that Anne had given him and said, wait a minute, I think I may end up becoming a father as a result of this, he could have filed a form called an acknowledgement of paternity that says, okay, I am the actual father, and then contacted the husband and said, FYI, your wife is sleeping with drifters to have a child, and then the husband could say, I am probably not the father of this child. Then he would also file a disclaimer of paternity, and then the stranger becomes the legal father.
So, but there is some legal means for the stranger to have a part in his child's life.
There is, but he's got a time limit.
Okay.
It sounds like there's going to be a presumed father in this case because Anne is either married or living with this other dude. And if there is a presumed father, then somebody who wants to file a paternity proceeding in Washington has to do it within 4 years of the birth of the child. So if he comes along and sees his own eyes in this child more than 4 years after that night of passion at the motel, then it doesn't matter that he's the biological father. He's not going to be able to step in and challenge it. And the reason why that time limit is there is because it's not good for society and it's not good for the child to come along and strip away the rights from the guy they thought was their father for so long.
So we haven't even really talked about Anne's partner, whether it's her husband or her boyfriend or some guy. Assuming that they're not in some sort of open relationship or have had, a lot of talks about this, where then I feel like they could have gone to a fertility clinic, for example, if they were communicating.
That's true, but drifters are cheaper.
But I feel like having a medical support is going to improve your chances. Either that, or Anne has spent a lot of money on hotel rooms on an awful lot of drifters to get one that worked.
Yeah, she did say that it was a motel that she knew well.
Okay, so I think we can safely say that the husband or the boyfriend is not a willing participant in this drifter for sperm scheme.
Unlikely.
What happens if and when he finds out that is not his child?
Again, he's got a time limit. He's got to challenge it within 4 years of the child's birth, because he's the presumed father. He can file for a paternity proceeding during that time limit, where there's going to be the DNA test and the Maury Povich moment, and
you are not the father.
Yeah, and when he dances off stage, then at that point he is not legally responsible for the child. He doesn't have a child support obligation. He doesn't have a custody obligation for that child.
Okay.
If this happens more than 4 years after the child is born, too late. He can't challenge it. He will have both child support and custody obligations if they split up, which I suspect he might want to do.
And then what about Anne herself? Has she committed fraud? Has she committed any criminal offense by maybe misrepresenting the paternity of her child?
No. If I was really bound and determined to throw Anne in jail for something here, I might try and find a way to bust her for picking up a hitchhiker, but even that's not an offense in most locations.
So, guilty. Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, and this whole thing is going to be sussed out in civil court.
Okay. Well, then the court recommends that Anne visit a medical fertility expert, somebody maybe with a couple of letters behind their name, the next time she wants to make a baby.
And I'm going to tell everybody involved to get involved with the Dave Thomas Center for Adoption.
So in the matter of DJ Jazzy, Jeff, and the Fresh Prince, parents just don't understand.
So to you other kids all across the land, there's no need to argue. Parents just don't understand.
It starts out simple enough. They go shopping for school supplies. It's time for school clothes, and Will Smith and Mrs. Smith are at the store arguing over fashion choices. But then it takes
for you young people listening to this, that is Will Smith the actor. He used to be a rapper.
Yeah. Otherwise known as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I'm not sure what's our jurisdiction on this? Is it Bel-Air? It's pre-Bel-Air, so it's probably Philadelphia.
Yeah, I looked it up. He says we headed downtown to the Gallery Mall. The Gallery Mall is in Philadelphia. So we are in West Philadelphia here, born and raised.
Squarely in Pennsylvania. So, but then after the mall incident, things take kind of a dark turn. And it begins with Will, or the Fresh Prince, taking his parents' Porsche for a ride. And I quote, "My parents went away on a week's vacation and they left the keys to the brand new Porsche. Would they mind? Well, of course not. I'll just take it for a little spin." So right away, we got him for auto theft or joyriding. I guess we talked a little bit about that in our traffic court episode.
We did, yeah. The difference between auto theft and joyriding is that with theft, you never intend to bring it back to the owner. Okay. With joyriding, it's just, I'm going to take it for a spin and then I'm going to bring it back. That's charged as unauthorized use of an automobile in Pennsylvania. Now, it looks like Will might have actually read the statute when he was writing this.
Okay.
Because the line, would they mind? Well, of course not. It sounds like he's trying to raise one of the defenses in the statute.
They left the keys. They gave him access to the vehicle. They didn't hide the keys, so he didn't have to go somewhere unauthorized to get them.
Right. Well, to quote, this is 18 Pennsylvania Statute Section 3928B. It is a defense to prosecution under this section that the actor reasonably believed that the owner would have consented to the operation had he known of it.
In this case, the actor Will Smith.
Right.
But then it gets a little bit weird because as he's driving around, he spots a beautiful girlie walking. And I quote, I honked my horn just to get her attention. She said, "Was that for me?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Why?" I said, "Come on and take a ride with a hell of a guy." She agrees to hop in and go for a ride with Fresh Prince. So they go to McDonald's and they get on and are having a good time until Will chooses to commit a speeding infraction and gets pulled over by the cops. We were doing 90 in my mom's new Porsche, and to make this long story short. When the cop pulled me over, I was scared as hell. I said, "I don't have a license, but I drive very well." Almost had a heart attack that day. Come to find out, the girl was a 12-year-old runaway. Okay, so let's just assume that Will had no prurient interest here and was just out to make some new friends. It sounds like he is in a metric ton of trouble. I mean,
oh, yeah. So the bigger offense here is Pennsylvania has a separate statute for luring a child into a motor vehicle. And the apparent age defense there only works if the kid is 13 or older. So because she's 12, he can't even argue that she looked like she was 18. So that's one count of luring a child into a motor vehicle, and then he is harboring a runaway as a result, which is charged as child custody interference.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so he's facing two different offenses here. The girl, though, isn't going to be charged with anything. It's not a crime to run away in Pennsylvania. The police just pick you up and take you back to whoever has custody of you.
Yeah, so I imagine anything he says, if he says he's like, I didn't know she was 12, honest, and I didn't know she was a runaway. That's not a defense. Like you're done. You're bait. You're cooked. You're screwed.
Yeah, don't talk to the cops.
And he said there was no way. Wait, okay. He says, I was arrested. The car was impounded. There was no way for me to avoid being grounded. I feel like being grounded is the least of your worries right now, Fresh Prince.
Yeah, being grounded in the county lockup.
But let's just get out of it so we can leave court and go have a drink. What are the charges?
Let's see. We got joyriding. We have got luring a child into a motor vehicle. We got child custody interference. We've got speeding. He's driving 90, and we've got driving without a license.
Okay. So guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. I am going to sentence Will Smith to have kids of his own someday so he knows what it feels like to be a parent.
I sentence Will to get a job at the carnival. One of those guess your age, guess your weight kiosks, so that maybe he can be a better judge in the future of people's age appropriateness.
Yeah, and the carnival will be an excellent place for him to wear his plaid shirt with a butterfly collar.
He could double as a rodeo clown.
Yep.
Thanks to our announcer, Deb Slater. If there's a song you'd like for us to feature, send your song ideas to songcrimes@gmail.com. If you like the songs you hear, buy them on iTunes, or even better, support your local independent music store. And if you like the rest of the show, please subscribe, rate, review, and tell people about the show. And as always, don't do anything stupid, but if you do, keep your mouth shut. Court is adjourned.
Would you like to go undercover to fight discrimination? If so, you can become a fair housing tester. Find your local fair housing organization at nationalfairhousing.org.